people who are in narcissistic abuse, there are a few common denominators I see on the receiving end.
There are little, what they call slips of their mask. In the devaluation phase, they literally began doing little things to you to make you question your reality. There is a biochemical component of this abuse cycle that you're releasing oxytocin when you go through the process of devaluation and that intermittent reinforcement. You're releasing chemicals that actually create an addiction.
Poke, poke, poke. You blow up.
Yes.
And now this is what we call DARVO, right? Reverse victim order.
The fact that you're even going through the process of trying to understand what happened to you is proof that they did not break you.
You're not alone.
Yes.
There are people out here that understand this, but it is something that is very real. Today, I am joined by Kimberly Weeks. Now, I just want to put out there before we get started, this is such a get for me. I'm so excited. I've known Kim for a long time. She was an instructor to me when I became certified as a trauma care practitioner. And I also dove in deep on extra courses with her specific to narcissistic abuse. She's been a mentor and a really great instructor to me over the years. Kim has years of experience in helping individuals recover from narcissistic abuse. She specializes in guiding her clients towards healing, empowerment, and reclaiming their lives. In today's episode, we're going to go deep on narcissism. We're going to explore how to spot it. We're going to talk about the impact of narcissistic relationships and practical steps to get to the other side. You do not want to miss this. Kim, welcome.
Good. Thank you.
So good to have you here.
Great to be here.
You are my narcissistic abuse go-to guru, mentor. You're someone I've learned from a lot from in school, in life, and it's just so lovely to have you. I really want to dive right in, and I want to have an understanding of what was your calling to go towards working with women that were struggling with narcissistic abuse and narcissistic patterns in their life?
That's a really great question. And, from my experience, there's a network of people that work with narcissistic abuse, sociopathy, psychopathy as it relates to intimate partner relationships. And in that network, everyone has a personal, not everyone, but most people have a very personal experience with that. I've experienced it in my own life. I've experienced it in intimate partner relationships. I was married for a long time and experienced it. And so because of that, it's something that you start studying. People say you get an involuntary PhD when you go through this experience.
Amen.
Because people are trying to figure out what in the world just happened to me.
Yeah.
They are completely unfamiliar with the pattern. They are completely unfamiliar with the process. And so in order to kind of ground yourself, make sense of what is taking place, that feels very, I'm going to use the term crazy making. People want to research. 99% of the time, people go on Google and start going, what does it mean when this happens? What does it mean when someone turns what they just did around and say that you did it? And what does it mean when someone's denying reality? And you start going through this process of studying. And when I realized that there was a name for this.
Yep.
And it's an actual thing. I became fascinated with understanding all the nuances of it. And as in my own recovery process, found these different programs that helped you begin learning how to support, coach, encourage, validate other survivors. And so that's what my business was launched out of. And that's what really is a passion for me now, because I'm able to not only listen to someone's experience, but I'm able to empathize with their experience because I've experienced all of the nuances mentally, emotionally, somatically, how it's impacted the course of your life, your health, all of the different elements. And when I'm able to do that with clients, there's something very, I'm going to use the word We use the word oil, like there's an anointing over it. Because what it does is it creates this healthier bond with the person to let them know that they're not crazy.
It's so interesting when you just gave that stat about people that look it up in line, because that's how I knew a relationship that I was in that I would always just call toxic.
Right.
I was Googling just the how do I put it? Like the nuances of the relationship that I didn't have in any other relationship. And I don't even remember exactly what I was searching. It was, over 12 years ago, but I was searching and searching and searching. And this word, narcissism, kept coming up, and words like sociopathic. And I was like, wait, there's a name for this?
Right.
And so it helped me. And I think this is something I really want to talk about, which is it really helped me name something. And when I could name something, I could, to your point, further dive into it because I knew what I was now looking for.
Right.
Now, I have a question for you. Sometimes people will come to me in my private practice and they know that they're in a dysfunctional relationship, a toxic relationship, and two things happen. Either one, they say to me, so-and-so is narcissistic. And I'm sensitive to it because I think the word can be overused and it loses its value. So I'll say to them, well, tell me more about that. Like, what is happening or not happening that leads you to believe that that's narcissistic? Right. And I think also it helps. Sometimes people, let's just say they determine, or it's a different client, and they go, well, this person's a narcissist and this is narcissistic abuse. Or they'll say to me, do you think the person's a narcissist? And when the person says to me, do you think they're a narcissist? My response, and I'll be curious to your reaction to this, is sometimes I say, well, I don't know if it really matters.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, what we're talking about is that you feel unhappy, unsafe, unseen, insecure in a relationship. So at the big picture, does it really matter if we label it narcissistic or not for your own healing versus healing the wound that it's created, period? And I'm curious to what you think about that.
That is a really great question. And I think, for people who do try to go do the study to figure out what in the world is going on, and they start getting into I'm going to use the term, the weeds of the actual process of abuse, the cycle of abuse, all the terminology, because they want to understand what, or be able to put a name to their experience, which I think is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the question is this something that's healthy for me? Is this something that's helping me grow as a person? Right. This relationship dynamic. Do I feel safe? Do I feel like I'm able to continue my process of growth and development connected to this person? And if the answer is no, and often people who find themselves in situations have a history of it, not all, but many of them are familiar. This is familiar, this pattern of behavior, this devaluation, this hot and cold, back and forth. They call it intermittent reinforcement, where someone is nice to you one day and cruel the next. It's familiar. And so the question becomes, do I want this?
That was kind of my point. And that's why, because sometimes, and it's not for me to downgrade or downplay. And I always make sure that they understand that. What I'm trying to get them to do is focus not on the label, but focus on the healing, right? Because, I'm such a huge component of like, whatever you feed your mind is your reality. And there are certain things that I work through with my clients that label, certain languages create a negative context that make it difficult for them to unroot from that context. So anxiety is one of those words. Cancer is one of those words. Narcissism is one of those words where we're like, listen, it is what it is, right? Like we can define what narcissistic abuse is, which we're going to talk about today. We can define what a cancer is. We can define what an anxiety is and how it's impacting your nervous system. But the moment we say the word, there's nothing but a negative connotation to it. And what I'm trying to help the person do is not neutralize it, because again, I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm trying to bring it to its most fundamental core of how it's impacting them.
Right.
Without using language that exacerbates it within the nervous system. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but does that make sense to you?
I think what you're describing is, do I want to focus on the pain problem or do I want to focus on the transformation?
Right.
That's available to me.
Right.
And here's what's tricky in this particular type of experience. Because the person has been targeted, they are unaware that they have been preyed upon. There has been an actual scheme or wile perpetrated on them. There is a place for having to put names to the experience. There is a place for that. If you look at the continuum of healing for people who have narcissistic, abusive relationships, there is a period where you have to come to grips with reality as a result of your reality constantly being distorted. That's how I want to say it. But we don't stay when I work with clients. We don't park there. We're driving through the parking lot of the experience so that you can come to grips with what actually is true and valid for your experience on the way to transformation, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because without that, there's a latent disorientation that remains. That we don't want to leave there, if that makes sense. We want that person to come clearly into acceptance of the reality of the relationship and its impact on them. And that is a part of that process. I think what can happen often, because that abuse cycle keeps us releasing certain chemicals. And one of the things I talk to my clients about is there is a biochemical component of this abuse cycle that you're releasing, oxytocin. When you're in the love bombing phase, you're releasing adrenaline because of the rush of, having this new passionate love experience or this a lot of attention. You're releasing chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline when you go through the process of devaluation and that intermittent reinforcement. You're releasing chemicals that actually create an addiction.
Right.
And because of that, the person has to go through withdrawal. They have to withdraw from that. And what can happen if you park in the labeling is you're continuing to feed that addiction. Because every time you put a name to it and you put the negative image in front of you and you're continuing to release those chemicals and over, even though you're out of it or even though you have decided to leave it, you're continuing the addiction process or the addiction cycle by sitting in that content or sitting in that
narrative,
awareness, all of those things. And so while there's a place for it, because a lot of my clients are in what's called cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Which is when they have two opposing things coming from the same vessel. They have experienced this loving, amazing person and this very cruel person. And that chemical release of the back and forth keeps them not understanding and not being able to fully accept the reality that the person actually took them through this cycle intentionally.
All right, good. I'm going to
Go ahead.
I want to pause you there because that is going to bring me into so many questions that I have for you.
All right.
So I have 3 questions that come up the most when I'm working with clients, and I want to cover those 3, and you just started to tap into one of them right there. So the first of the 3 questions is how to tell the difference, or what is the difference between abuse and narcissistic abuse?
Okay, so a person who, and I'm gonna lay it out this way. A person can abuse another person and does not have the intention to do that. Abuse is simply harm that caused to another person. Okay, and the abuse is typically in that person who is doing the abuse. It's a part of their response to stress, their response to overwhelm, and patterns they grew up seeing in their childhood. They don't want to do it, and they typically go and they seek out some kind of help to get it. It's kind of like a person who may be in a pattern of addiction, or a pattern of addiction to a process of response, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Want to be that person, and they are willing to go admit and willing to go get the support needed to try to change that pattern. Okay. Anyone can abuse anyone. If you say something that's harsh to your children, that's an abuse of your position as a parent. If you yell at your coworkers because you're having a bad day, that's an abuse. It's the maltreatment of another person. And there are people that abuse other people, or there is an act of abuse to another person, and they don't have a desire, intention, calculation, premeditation to do those things. They may just be in patterns from their life that they may not be fully aware of the impact of.
And do you feel like in that scenario, there is a sense of guilt and shame?
There's a sense of remorse. There's a sense of guilt. There's a sense of shame. And there's also a sense of almost like defeat for that person, because they practiced it so long, or this is all they know how to communicate. This is all, they don't have the tools. They don't have the resources. And so they're doing what they know to do. But there is a part of that person that is able to have some awareness of what they're doing and their desire to change that. Narcissistic abuse is a completely different thing, because in like manner, a person who is experienced, or a person who is a narcissistic abuser may have had childhood trauma. They may have been a golden child in their family system that was given a lot of attention, allowed to do whatever they wanted to do, and everything revolved around them. They may have been a child of a narcissistic abuser and watched that pattern and picked it up from their marinade. And they actually didn't develop certain things in their childhood development that allows them within their brain development to empathize, connect with. Those parts of the brain don't light up. The parts of their nervous system that is able to differentiate between someone else's experience and their own didn't develop. They didn't actually complete child development. And as a result of that, the person doesn't have the capacity to do anything else with what they're doing. They're actually not registering the impact of their behavior on other people, except for the purpose of experiencing elation through the power, dominance, and control that they get. Their sense of feeling valuable and important comes from that abuse pattern. And so it is very strategic. It is calculated. In many instances, it's their sadistic part of it, where they get pleasure from duping people, from tricking people, from taking someone who has strength, qualities, characteristics, gifts, and breaking them down. It gives them a sense of that. It's almost like it's like they get a sense of expansion, a sense of self from doing the act.
So to your point earlier, where when it's traditional, I don't want to use the word traditional, when it's abuse,
Right.
often the person's intention is not to create harm, but they are creating harm.
They're creating harm nonetheless. Absolutely. On the other end, narcissistic abusers not only intend to create harm, they are preying on, hunting for their next targets. They are looking for people who have things that will benefit them to that person's devaluation or take something from that person.
It's interesting. I was at a consultation actually with someone the other day, and she kept referring to this partner of hers as being very narcissistic.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, his goal in life is to punish me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to invite you to think of that maybe a little bit differently. If it's truly narcissistic, they need something out of it. There has to be something to benefit them. They don't give a shit about you.
No.
They don't care if you're in pain. So the goal is not to punish you. The goal is to get a rise out of you. Because when the rise is gotten out of you, that is fuel for their nervous system.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right? And it's so important for people to hear that unless it's going to benefit the abuser in some way,
they don't do it.
They don't care.
They don't care. They don't participate. They don't do it. If it's not going to give them something, either narcissistic supply, which narcissistic supply is your attention, your energy, your focus, your aura, your reputation, your connections. If it gives them something, that's narcissistic supply. And then there's sadistic supply, where there is that sense of being delighted that they're able to bring someone down, that they're able to quote unquote punish someone, that they're able to take something back that they had previously given, that they're able to dismantle a person's sense of self, their identity, that they're able to devalue you and get you to come into agreement with your lower image of yourself and operate in it. They get something, and it's always a transaction. Every interaction, they're literally scoping out and scanning for what's in it for me, what is going to benefit me from being able to have a conversation, have a connection, be in a relationship, be in a partnership, start a business. Who can I use? That's what they're looking to do.
Right. So, first of all, I'm so glad we've covered that in such a fundamental way, because I think, as you know, people who are in this form of abuse, this narcissistic abuse, there are a few common denominators I see on the receiving end, which is the questioning of their own reality, the questioning of themselves, questioning whether or not they're the problem, convincing themselves that they are the problem, and believing that, maybe they're making it all up.
Yes. Or they can work their way into a relationship that's healthy, or they can prove and earn their way into that person treating them like they have self-worth, like they have value, and like they are worth choosing.
Yes. Yes. I'm pausing for 1 second. I just realized my dog is in the...
Okay.
And okay, come on. Oh, I know you're sleeping, but I don't trust you. Come on. I was like, I heard her snort, and I was like, if she barks, it won't be pretty. Okay, we'll resume here. So, Kim, the two other questions that I have for you kind of really play off of this really beautiful foundation that you set up. So,
before we go into those two questions,
yes.
Can we talk about just some characteristics that someone looks for? Okay, because
Let's do that.
Some of the times, these are the things that they don't happen at the same time. And so over time, in a connection with someone who is a narcissistic abuser, you kind of pick these things up over time. It's a sense that person, a grandiosity. They think that they're like almost godly, lowercase g, like otherworldly. They have a very grandiose sense of self. They think that they have a right to exploit other people for their benefit and their expense. That they are entitled, that's another one, entitled to do that. So there is an exploitative mindset. How can I use this person? What's in it for me? And then there also is this entitlement to do that. There is a sense of specialness that rules, standards, values do not apply to them. They are unique and they are special and they are separated and apart from other people. And so boundaries, their reciprocation, mutuality to treat others the way that they desire to be treated. They believe they deserve special treatment that doesn't apply to other people. Manipulation. Heavy, heavy, heavy. The language of narcissistic abusers is deception and manipulation. They're constantly distorting reality so that you or whoever their target isn't able to tell what's right, wrong, real, or not real. And they like to have an event happen and then literally bring it back to you and say, no, this is what really happened. And I want you to repeat back to me what I just said to you. They're literally going through a process of conditioning and programming. And, there are other, just like no empathy, extremely low. If they cannot, again, that brain development didn't happen so that they can feel any remorse or any kind of sorrow or grief or any of that for the actions that they do to other people. And the DSM-5 talks about having 5 or more 6+ qualities that over time is a pattern of behavior. So this isn't just how they treat you or the targeted. This is what you see show up with their family system. This is what you see showing up with how they treat their children, their parents, their coworkers, their business partners, their intimate partner. It's everywhere. It's a pervasive pattern of tactical, let me use that term, tactical manipulation, deception, dominance, and control. That is what you're looking for in some
So here's a question, because I know this and I know you know this, but not a lot of people understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Are there different types of narcissism? If so, how many-ish? And would those qualities be the same across that spectrum of narcissism?
Yes, those qualities are going to be the same. They're just going to take on different places and flavors. Okay.
So how many different types of narcissism do you suspect there is out there?
There are between 4 and 8. Okay. There's some people put them in these kind of 4 categories. And what
would those 4 categories be?
What you call a communal narcissist, where they are a prominent person in the community and they get that supply of attention from that position. Politicians, people in the judicial system, people in faith communities like pastors and, spiritual leaders, people in civic organizations who are the heads of civic organizations or community involvement organizations, nonprofits, all of those types of things. They want to be in those positions because the position in and of itself means that they have followers, influencers, on social media, all of those types of things. It's like a communal narcissism. And then there are people who talk about this concept of the overt, grandiose narcissist. That's the person who traditionally what people would say is just the most arrogant. They just talk like they are the my kids used to say, the bee's knees. They are just like the most important, like they talk like they can do anything to anyone and they deserve everything that anyone has. I mean, it's very overt. Anybody that comes across them, Kanye West comes to mind. Like anybody that comes across and knows that person, just they think very highly of themselves.
They literally think in many ways that they are a god. And also, would you say that in that, I mean, probably across the board, one of these characteristics is rules of life do not apply to them.
Not apply. Absolutely.
Just don't.
Whatever they want. Yes. They deserve that. They deserve that.
Yes.
They are different and otherworldly, and they get to do things that other people don't because of who they are. They are a special, unique and special is the terminology that I've heard quite often. And then there is what's called the covert narcissist. The covert narcissist is the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's the person who is doing these things, but they are doing it literally by presenting to you after mirroring you, studying you and your likes and characteristics, and then being everything that you are, taking on your qualities, characteristics, gifts, interests, so that you think that that person is a match for you, that they are literally your person. And then they are subtly underneath that doing these behaviors over time, devaluing you, tearing you down, stonewalling, smear campaigning you to other people, and doing so in terms of like concern. Oh, I'm so concerned about this person. I've noticed this behavior and that behavior. Oh, this person actually talked to me about their mental health and that they had to start increasing their medication. I'm really concerned. And they're actually smearing you to other people. They're doing it very covertly.
Yes.
Calling your competence into question, your intelligence, your intentions, and you have no idea it's happening. It's not what friends. It's sneaky and behind the scenes. And that's probably the most dangerous form of narcissism.
I agree.
Because you are being presented with, and in the love bombing phase, they are like doing all the things. Like you think that that person is the most genuine, authentic, wonderful, good-natured, good-hearted, and you see them doing these things in different places to impress you or give an impression. They're treating you that way. So there's a match. And then all of a sudden, there are little, what they call slips of their mask. And they literally, it's not intentional most of the time, but once you get a little bit further down, it is intentional. But in the devaluation phase, they literally begin doing little things to you to make you question your reality. When they are all out on behavior that is harmful, they turn it around on you and make it about what you're doing and literally project what they just did on you. They will, in that manipulation process, start making up problems, taking anything that you do and creating an emergency crisis about it so that you feel you're doing harm to them.
Right.
You're the problem in the relationship with them, and that you need to work on yourself so that you can be a good partner to them. They're actually tricking you into thinking you're the reason why there are problems in the relationship, and you're not doing anything different than you've been doing the whole time.
No, but what you're doing is you're questioning every single piece of yourself. I have 1,000 things I want to say about it, but I want you to get to the fourth type as well. So we've talked about communal, overt, covert.
And then they call the fourth one the inverted narcissist. It's a person who's, I'm going to call it the Robin to the Batman. It's the person who is a narcissist, but they connect with another narcissist who is a bigger presence. And they are the sidekicks. They like to come into agreement with a community. That's honestly, they actually run together, these types of people.
Yeah.
In packs. So if you are in a relationship with someone who is a narcissistic abuser, you can look at their friend group, and there's either people who are a part of their friend group who has bought into their false image, or there are people who are also doing the same thing and they can kind of get camaraderie around it. Those are the two.
I'm just sitting with my nervous system right now because I know there are a lot of people who are listening to this that are saying shit. Like, I think I've been in it. I kind of known I've been in it. The way you just described the covert, I think is going to rattle a lot of people. I want to cover two things. Number one, we've talked about the common characteristics. I think that that's clear.
Okay.
What I want my audience to hear from you is, what is the common underlying root cause of what causes someone to go there to begin with, or to develop, and I'm going to say adapt and show up this way. My feeling in this space is it's a lack of security within themselves. It's a deep insecurity and a huge lack of self-esteem, which would not make sense, especially for someone that's coming up so grandiose, that has this higher than thou impression of themselves outwardly. But what do you think from that realm is kind of this common underlying theme within the person's sense of self?
Well, A, they didn't develop a sense of self. A, they did not fully develop a sense of self and differentiation from their family systems. That's the first thing I would say. And because of that, their existence is one of pain and a complete lack of security, like a void, I'm going to call it that. And so they create something called a false self. That false self is the mask. In IFS, they call it like a part of them that covers up an exile, which is a very deeply wounded, traumatized part of them. But that false self then becomes the way in which they can relate to the world and be accepted. And they learn in their childhood patterns of their childhood, family systems, what gets them that sense of being okay in their space or being acceptable in their environment. Is it good grades? Is it being the best at sports? Is it being the best at, navigating, keeping or caretaking the family system so that they're the person that's kind of like negotiating safety for everybody in the household? Is it, do they get all the attention by constantly doing things that or get them in trouble at school? Whatever it is, the bad boy image or the bad girl image, whatever it is, they create a false self and they interface with the world based on that false self that hides that deep pain, that deep shame, and that deep insecurity. And so if you think about, like, I have four sons. My youngest is 13 and my oldest is 26. And every child goes through the process of having to separate and differentiate and actualize as a separate part of their family system. And they go through they call it coming into the opposite of failure to launch. They launch out into the world and they develop a sense of who they are apart from their family systems. This person actually didn't complete that process. They didn't complete it. And so they keep going through, Sam Vatman says, they keep going through a process of having to connect with a maternal image or a caregiver image, develop a loving, quote unquote, relationship with that, and then try to go through the process of completing, separating, differentiating, and becoming their own self. And they don't ever actually do that. What they do during that separation period in an adult relationship is discard the person, but they're still left with that same pain, shame, and insecurity. So they have to do it all over again. That is why there is an abuse cycle. It's like stunted growth. It's stunted development. And the reason it's stunted is because in order for you to actually become a fully self-actualized, differentiated self, you have to have what's called whole object relations. You have to be able to see other people and yourself as both the good qualities and the qualities that you need to work on. You have to identify the wholeness of who you are. And people who hold this deep well of shame, pain, and insecurity do not acknowledge, because of that brain development or lack thereof, they don't want to identify the parts of them that are bad.
Right.
It's too
This is why it's everybody else's problem and everybody else's fault.
That's correct. That's right.
So that brings me to question number 2, which is what people ask, which is, can this person be better? Can this relationship improve? Is there anything that can change so we don't stay in this cycle?
The answer to that is no.
Right.
It is no. Again, this pattern of them trying to complete their development with individual partners or in individual situations is going to continue to happen over and over. That abuse cycle of love bombing, devaluation, discard, and hoovering is going to keep happening. They have to keep that supply of attention because behind the false self is a very empty person. They have to get fuel. They have to get life outside of themselves. And so because of that, I'm glad you asked the question because a lot of my clients ask the same thing. Is there anything I could have done to have changed the outcome of this situation or to meet this person's needs? And I want you to think about how much, if you pour water into a bucket that has holes in it, you can pour and pour and pour and pour. That water is going to keep seeping out and out and out. There is no way to fill, to satisfy, or to meet the needs of a person who hasn't dealt with that well of pain, shame, and insecurity. Mm. There's no way for you to fill it. They try to convince you that you can do things, but you cannot. Each of us have to go through our own development, differentiation, and actualization for ourselves. If that person is unwilling to do that, they're going to continue to try to get something from other people to fill that bucket with the holes in the bottom. And so whomever is filling it, it's going to keep seeping out. That's why they're in this cycle of constantly looking for supply. That's why they can't just be with one partner at a time. That's why they can't just be in a family system situation and there be peace. There has to be constant attention and chaos and response in order for them to feel like they're actually alive.
So I think what gets really confusing, I'm sure you see this with your clients as well, is in this ebb and flow cycle of abuse, narcissistic abuse, there are peaks and there are valleys. Yes. And sometimes when they're at this peak, and when I say the peak, I mean everything feels and looks fine enough, good. We might even have a good night. We might even have a good afternoon. Something's going to click. Mm-hmm. And then it's that hook all over again. They're like, but I saw it. And it was real. And I know it was real and it was good. And so if we can just keep it at the good.
Yes.
So like, why can't this is what my client will say, why can't I just make it happen where I can keep it at the good?
Mm-hmm. The reason you can't do that is because both people aren't trying to do that.
And why? And this is the question that they'll have, though. And I know this. So for whoever's listening, I'm asking the question for you. Why is the narcissist, and that's how I'll just phrase it for right now, why is that person able to be in that, I'm putting in quotes, good place then
True.
we can't do it consistently.
Because that well of pain is still there. Because that well of shame is still there. And if you remember, supply is supply, positive or negative. So in the moments where their pain becomes loud in their system, that's when you'll get the devaluation and the abusive, cruel, cold, calculated. It's because they're actually expressing what's underneath that false self. It can't be quieted in any other way. And they're going to project that onto you, that pain, that shame, that blame, that accusation. And they say, one of the telltale things is when a narcissistic abuser accuses you of something, they're actually confessing to what they're actually doing. So if they're doing things away from the relationship that would cause a person to feel guilt or remorse, they have to put that somewhere. And they're not going to take responsibility for it for themselves. They're going to project that onto the other person, accuse that of the other person. And by doing so, they shift that feeling, that discomfort onto you.
Right.
That's why there are the moments where everything's great and you're giving them attention and they feel good. And then they may be doing something separate from the relationship that would be a violation of the relationship. They're getting attention from other people. They may have sex with other people, whatever the situation may be. They have to take that feeling of disorientation and dissonance and put it somewhere. And so they're going to put that on you. So that's why there is this one moment you have that glimmer that everything's so great and everything's peaceful. And wow, this is what it felt like at the beginning. And then like the drop of time, you're right back into it where you're being accused of things you're not doing, where something is being projected onto you. They're stalling what I call false arguments, where they take any random thing and make it, a huge significant problem that you need to work on to keep you on your toes and you working for their approval. All of that is supply.
Well, and it's so funny because the way I just wrote down two things. Number one is what I've always sensed, well, not always, but when it is warranted, when the abuser senses that the person is onto them and that they're gaining some sense of agency and courage, and they might actually leave. That love bombing gets huge. Number one. So again, going back to what I said before, it's what's the benefit to the abuser? It's like, I need to get that hook back in. I need to make them feel seen, heard, understood, important, whether it's a Louis Vuitton bag or I'm taking you somewhere, I'm just recognizing something you've done. Like, it's the hook. And then it gets you to question yourself again. That's that cognitive dissonance of, oh, well, see, he can be good, even though he can be an ass, or she. But now I'm confused, number one. And number two, if it generates chaos, it is always fuel.
That's right. And
it is always fuel.
I've heard it said this way, that the essence of narcissistic abuse is weaponized cognitive dissonance.
No doubt. Okay, so that makes sense to me. Define, please.
So cognitive dissonance, as our brains process information, and we're able to kind of see, okay, there's a cause, there's an effect. There is a behavior, and then I can assign, to this person that this person is a safe person. This person is a good person. It's like congruency. Right. Cognitive dissonance is where someone presents you with two different experiences with them, and your brain cannot process it. It can't make sense of it. It can't say, okay, this is good or not good. This is bad or not, but it can't. It's like I describe it as like you have two trains on a train track that hit each other and they just hit and they can't move forward. A lot of clients will describe the feeling of being in narcissistic abusive relationships as feeling stuck. They don't know what's happening and they have a disorientation, confusion, distortion. They can't put their feet on the ground. They don't have a sense of what's real and what isn't. And because of that, the narcissist knows they're doing this. The narcissist knows they're doing this. And therefore, that disorientation is actually being weaponized to get what they want in the moment. And if what they want in the moment is for you to look at them like a hero, then that's what they'll use with love bombing, with gifts, with trips, with validation, with doing things that make themselves look really like safe to you. If what they want in the moment is a place to put their pain or the place to put the guilt of what they're doing away from the relationship and project that onto you so there's chaos and disorientation, then they'll do that. And that's why it's weaponized, because at the end of the day, if you're in a position where you can't move, you can't process what's happening, they have all the power. And if they have all the power, they can use up all of your resources. Again, the thought for a narcissistic abuser is what's in it for me and how can I use this person? So they are able to do that and take all of what's inside of you. And it's almost like if you've ever squeezed the end of the toothpaste out of the toothpaste, I'm going to get all of this out. Then I can throw it away when I want to.
You know, as you describe it, again, my whole nervous system is like freaking out because it just, I empathize with so many things that I hear. So I want to give an example to kind of make it relatable to this last part that you just described. So this is the weaponization part, because I use this language a lot, right? When I'm working with my clients that are in this and we talk about it so they understand what's happening. Imagine that you as the receiver of this has been keen enough to understand I need to set boundaries and I need to set firm boundaries. And by the way, this is why, and we're going to talk about this next, low and no contact is just such a natural, necessary step. But let's just say you're in a position where you haven't gotten there and you're just thinking the way to deal with this person is just firm boundaries, and it's a firm no. Right? And it's a firm no, and they find 8,000 different ways to get you to say yes, and you are consistently saying no. No, in all the ways that you can. And then the person goes and does it anyway.
Right.
And then you lose your shit because you have set the boundary. You have used your voice. You've had voice and choice. You've done all the things. You've said no. You've made it clear. You've had your agency, and they swoop in and they undermine and undercut, and they do it anyway. You lose your mind. And here's the weaponization. I think there's something wrong with you.
That's right.
You don't know how to manage your emotions. Maybe you're the narcissist. You know what? Actually, I went to my therapist, which they would never do, by the way. And that my therapist thinks you're bipolar because you're so up, you're so down. There's something wrong with you. And now this is the kicker. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call every single person in your network and say, I'm concerned about X.
Yes.
You know, they're not themselves. They're blowing up. The kids are seeing it. Like it's not like not being a good parent. That's the weaponization. It is, I am digging. I am poking that bear. It is all intentional, guys. Poke. You blow up.
Yes.
And now this is what we call DARVO, right? Reverse victim order.
Yes.
I am now living with a crazy person that can't manage their emotions. I'm worried about the kids. I'm worried about my own safety.
Yes.
And now they are separating you from all of your support because they're trying to convince and create this smear campaign that you actually have a problem, when in reality, it is this person that has manipulated and controlled the situation so you will blow up. The blow up is the intent, so they can do all these things, correct?
Yeah. This dynamic is probably the most insidious form of the breaking down of your sense of reality.
That's right.
Because no one is seeing these private pokes. Right. No one is seeing what I call the wear down, where the person, even though you have said no, continues to represent the same question, like you've never said anything, over and over and over. And
it's the breakdown.
They typically do it in times where you are having a great time with them and you did see the glimmer, and then they bring it right back. And then, there might be another time where they have, devalued you and stonewalled and won't answer questions, or they're extremely cruel, blown up, and punch things and all the things, and you're afraid, and they bring it up then. They're doing that kind of manipulation to try to wear you down and to get you to submit. And what they want you to submit to was the original agenda, the original plan, the original aim. And then when you finally start kind of discerning, wait a minute, something is wrong here, and you start making the most inkling of move in the direction of your own agency, and they sense that. Or you come back and you do blow up and you're like, look, that's, I said no. And they will sometimes take a camera out.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes we'll record a screenshot if you're on FaceTime. And then they will use that evidence of your dysregulation to go back and continue the smear campaign of questioning your intelligence, competence, your mental health, your ability to be emotionally stable, when the entire time they have been breaking down your sense of reality to push you overwhelm so that they can weaponize that against you. And when that happens and they present it to other people, and those people believe it and then turn on you and unfriend you, unfollow you, block your number, all these different things, you're left, supposedly, and I'm going to say it that way, without resources. But
that's the intention.
You're left without what they believe is power. Your attempt to assert your agency is met with the person removing all of the things that give you support. And it is intentional, it is strategic, and it is calculated. And it will happen. And then you ask the question about no or low contact. What ends up happening is the person who just had this happen is like traumatized. It's like they just got hit by a bus. Their world has been ripped from under them. And they're trying to figure out, I need support. I need help. And so they start calling around. They start trying to tell their story. They start trying to, meet with people and say, hey, this is what this person is like. And they've already been smeared crazy. And so the energy of that trauma shows up in those interactions because they feel completely disoriented. People then read that, oh, this is her being crazy, or this is him being crazy. And that's the while this is all happening, again, the person who is the narcissistic user is watching all of it, getting what you call duper's delight, getting that narcissistic sadistic pleasure and delight from watching you be completely disoriented and feverishly try to convince people in a supply because it revolves around them. They don't care whether it's good supply or bad supplies. And they're watching them. And then what happens is they'll put that mask back on. After all of that, come back and try to pretend that nothing happened. They may call you and act like it's a regular day. If you
amen to that,
like it's a regular day, like there's, like nothing happened, and or they'll call you and be like, oh my gosh, you know what? I can't live without you. I want us to be friends. We've spent so much time together. I don't want us to stop being disconnected. Again, the person who is the target is still in a state of shock. They're disoriented and they're addicted to the chemical releases of the narcissistic abuse cycle. So that person calling them and connecting, something happens in their body that feels like, oh, they get a hit. They get a hit of the connection with that person. And if they're being nice, that glimmer of hope comes right back and they get pulled right back into the cycle. And that's called hoovering. And so the reason that I work with people to go through the process of going no contact is because, if you've gone through marriage and divorce, there's something called post-separation abuse.
Yep.
Where they put in front of you new people that they are in relationship with, having a wonderful, they put somebody else in front of you. They're doing all of these things where they put it on their social media. You hear about from friends and all this stuff. And then you have been sidelined and they call you and act like nothing happened. And so you're disoriented. So the reason why you have to go through, you don't have to. You get to separate from this person is so you can go through the actual withdrawal process,
right?
The addiction of the narcissistic abuse cycle. You have to go through that process. And every time you talk to them, text them, hear their voice, see their face, see their name come up on your phone.
It's a zing.
It's a hit.
Yep.
It puts you right back. If you can imagine someone, it would be like someone who, has a drug or alcohol addiction, having that hit,
no doubt. All right. I'm watching the time. We're at an hour.
Huh?
I have so many other topics that I want to cover with you. This all is leading us up to, I think, really something very important, which is now what? What do I do? And not only what do I do, but I think it's really important that we talk about what a high conflict separation, divorce, disconnect looks like, what the family court system is knowledgeable on and what it is not, and what this post-separation, post-divorce abuse looks like, because it is very real.
Yes.
And it is a very consistent part of the continued abuse.
Yes.
Would you be willing to come back for another conversation? Because I think
I would love it. And honestly, this part of it, once you have experienced going through this abuse cycle, being discarded, being hoovered, being strung along, let me use that term, strung along, you are still in it energetically in your nervous system. This is probably the most dangerous part of this process. You would think that some of the things that happen in it while you're still with the person are very dangerous. But once the person loses a grip of control over you, whether it's through a divorce or through you going no contact with them, or through, literally some people literally getting up and moving to another state and they can't find you. It becomes a very dangerous game. This whole
game on.
It is game on, because they have to get back into a position where they can control the narrative and can control you. And they are in a position where they can't fully do it in the ways that they have been accustomed to doing it. And they are very paranoid. They believe people are out to do to them what they have done to others. So I would love to have that conversation.
Okay, amazing. So guys, I know this is a big topic. I know for sure someone or a handful of people are listening to this episode and you might feel dysregulated. You might feel something within your nervous system that's leaving you feeling unsettled. And I just would recommend that you find a safe space where you can sit and absorb.
Yeah.
You're not alone.
Yes.
There are people out here to support you. There are people out here that understand this. But it is something that is very real. And if the way that we spoke about this today speaks to you, speaks to your story, speaks to what you've been experiencing, I guess my biggest hope for you in this exact moment would just be that you know that you're not crazy.
That's right.
That you know that you're not alone, that this is a real thing, that you did not cause this for yourself, that you are not broken, you are not flawed, and there's nothing that you can do to make it better. And that's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because you're in a relationship with someone that doesn't know how to have a healthy relationship.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to do with whether or not you're enough or that you matter or that you're lovable or that you did something, my God, in your lifetime to deserve this. None of those things are true. You are lovable. You are important. You are enough. And my hope for you is that you'll hear this as an educational point and you will find the right support to help you harness your enoughness, your worth, your confidence, your deservingness, so you can easily navigate, which you can't really easily navigate it, but with the most peace possible, navigate to another place on this life's journey. So Kim, thank you so much. This has been such a powerful, educational, important episode. I will have you back. We will talk about what happens on the other side of all of this. And guys, if you enjoyed this conversation, all this information will be in the show notes, but you're going to want to look in the show notes. Kim, share what your website is, because this is all that you work in. This is your space. What is your website?
My website is thenarcissisticabusecoach.com. The only thing I would love to leave with people is, and I say this to my clients, is the fact that you're even going through the process of trying to understand what happened to you is proof that they did not break you. And that proof demonstrates to me that there is so much more ahead for you than what you have experienced, and that you have everything that you need within you to, I call it, to wake up the lion.
Yeah. Oh, baby. We're going to help these ladies roar.
Yes.
Or men. Could be men too, but whoever's on the receiving end. So thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate your expertise and your time. Guys, again, it's thenarcissisticabusecoach.com. You're going to want to stay tuned for episode number 2. Thank you again so much, Kim.
Absolutely, Stacey.